Something is happening right now that most people are missing. While the world watches political headlines and debates about peace in the Middle East, a prophetic clock is ticking louder than ever before. Donald Trump's actions with Israel, the Abraham Accords, the recognition of Jerusalem as Israel's capital, these aren't just political moves, they're prophetic markers that a humble man named William Branham warned about decades before any of us saw them coming. In 1933, long before Israel was even a nation again, Brother Branham received 7 visions that shook him to his core. He was a young minister then, just 24 years old, when God pulled back the curtain and showed him what was coming to America and the world. He saw these visions so clearly that he wrote them down and told his congregation about them. And here's what's remarkable. 6 of those 7 visions have already come to pass exactly as he described them. The 7th one is unfolding right before our eyes. Brother Branham preached about these visions throughout his ministry. In his sermon titled The 70 Weeks of Daniel, preached in 1961, he explained how Israel would be the key to understanding prophetic timing. He said that when Israel became a nation again in 1948, God's prophetic clock started ticking again after nearly 2,000 years of silence. Every move in Israel, every treaty, every leader who touches that land is part of God's end-time plan. And right now, with everything happening in the Middle East, we're watching prophecy unfold in real time. Think about this for a moment. A man who walked dirt roads in southern Indiana, who had barely a 7th grade education, spoke with prophetic accuracy about events that wouldn't happen for another 30, 40, even 50 years. He didn't make lucky guesses. He carried a gift that discerned the very thoughts and intents of hearts. And when he spoke about the future, heaven itself confirmed his words through signs and wonders that doctors and scientists couldn't explain away. Drop a comment below and let us know what state you're watching from. We want to connect with you because what we're about to share isn't just history, it's a warning for this very hour. Brother Branham taught that Israel is God's timepiece. When you want to know what time it is prophetically, don't look at America or Europe or any Gentile nation. Look at Israel. And right now, that timepiece is showing us we're closer to midnight than we've ever been before. Let me tell you exactly what Brother Branham saw in those 7 visions back in 1933. Because every word matters and every detail has proven true. He recounted these visions throughout his ministry, particularly in his 1960 sermon titled, Trying to Do God a Service Without Being in the Will of God, and again in other messages where he reminded his congregations that God had shown him these things decades before they happened. The first vision showed Mussolini invading Ethiopia and then coming to a shameful end, with his own people turning on him. Branham said he would see Mussolini's body in the streets, and that's exactly what happened in 1945, when Italian partisans killed him and hung his body upside down in a public square in Milan. The second vision revealed Adolf Hitler rising to power and leading Germany into a Second World War, and showed the Maginot Line, that fortification that France thought would protect them, but failed. Both visions came to pass with stunning accuracy. The third vision showed 3 great isms, fascism, Nazism, and communism, and how they would all come together in one united system. Brother Branham taught that communism would ultimately absorb the others, and he watched this happen in his lifetime as the Soviet Union grew in power after World War II. The fourth vision revealed tremendous scientific advancement, and he specifically mentioned seeing American family cars shaped like eggs, moving down highways controlled by some form of remote guidance. Remember, this was 1933, long before anyone imagined self-driving vehicles or the aerodynamic designs we see today. The fifth vision shook him deeply because it showed the moral condition of the world, particularly regarding women and modesty. He saw women wearing clothing that barely covered their bodies, and the rise of what he called a spirit of immorality that would sweep across America. He didn't preach this to judge anyone, but to warn that when you see these signs, you're looking at prophetic markers of the end times that Jesus himself talked about in Matthew chapter 24. The sixth vision showed him a beautiful woman rising to power in America, but with a cruel and wicked heart. He taught that this represented either a literal woman in high political office or the Catholic Church system gaining control over American politics. The seventh and final vision was the most sobering of all. He saw America completely destroyed by explosion and fire, burned to the ground, with nothing left but smoldering ruins. If this is speaking to your heart right now, leave a comment below and share where you're hearing this message from. 6 of these 7 visions have already come to pass exactly as Brother Branham described them. And the 7th one, that's what we need to talk about next, because what's happening with Israel and global politics right now is setting the stage for that final vision to be fulfilled. Now here's where everything Brother Branham taught comes into sharp focus with what we're seeing today. He preached extensively about Israel throughout his ministry, and one of his core teachings was this simple but profound truth. If you want to know what time it is on God's prophetic clock, don't look at Washington or Moscow or London. Look at Jerusalem. Look at Israel. That tiny nation is the key to understanding where we are in God's timetable. On May 14, 1948, something happened that hadn't occurred in nearly 2,000 years. Israel became a nation again. Brother Branham saw this as one of the most significant prophetic fulfillments in human history. In his sermon, The Masterpiece, preached in 1964, he taught that when the Jewish people returned to their homeland and raised their flag again, God's prophetic clock started ticking after centuries of silence. The times of the Gentiles, that long period Jesus spoke about in Luke's Gospel, was coming to a close. Brother Branham constantly referenced Jesus' teaching about the fig tree in Matthew chapter 24. Jesus told his disciples, "Now learn a parable of the fig tree. When his branch is yet tender and puts forth leaves, you know that summer is near. So likewise, when you see all these things, know that it is near, even at the doors. Verily I say unto you, this generation shall not pass, till all these things be fulfilled." Branham taught that the fig tree represented Israel. And when you see that nation budding again, coming back to life, you're looking at the final generation before Christ's return. He preached about Daniel's prophecy of the 70 weeks, explaining how 69 of those weeks were fulfilled when Jesus was crucified, but one final week, 7 years of tribulation, still remained. And that final week couldn't begin until Israel was back in their land, because Daniel's prophecy specifically concerned your people and your holy city, meaning the Jewish people and Jerusalem. Everything in end-time prophecy revolves around that city and that nation. This is why Donald Trump's actions with Israel carry such prophetic weight. When he recognized Jerusalem as Israel's capital in 2017, moving the American embassy there in 2018, he wasn't just making a political statement. Whether he understood it or not, he was aligning America with God's prophetic purposes for that nation. The Abraham Accords that brought historic peace agreements between Israel and Arab nations, these aren't random political achievements. They're prophetic puzzle pieces falling into place exactly as the Bible described. Share this message with someone who needs to understand what's really happening in the Middle East right now. Brother Branham warned us to watch Israel, and what we're watching is the stage being set for the final act of human history before Jesus returns for his bride. Brother Branham spent considerable time teaching about one of the most deceptive signs of the end times, the promise of peace when there is no real peace. He would quote from 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 3, where Paul warned, "For when they shall say peace and safety, then sudden destruction comes upon them, as travail upon a woman with child, and they shall not escape." This wasn't just a casual reference for Brother Branham. He taught that before the Great Tribulation begins, the world would be crying out for peace, and powerful leaders would promise to deliver it. In his sermon, The Patmos Vision, preached in 1960, Brother Branham taught extensively about the book of Revelation and how the Antichrist system would come offering solutions to the world's problems, particularly in the Middle East. He explained that the Antichrist wouldn't arrive announcing himself as evil. Instead, he would come as a peacemaker, a problem solver, someone who could finally bring stability to the most volatile region on Earth. The very place where peace has been impossible for thousands of years would become the stage where this deceptive peace would be offered. Now let me be very clear here, and this is important. Brother Branham never said that any specific American president was the Antichrist. He taught that the Antichrist spirit was a system, not necessarily one individual, and that this system would work through various leaders and governments throughout history. But he did teach us to recognize patterns, to understand prophetic principles, so that when we see certain things happening, We know what season we're in. Daniel chapter 9 verse 27 speaks of a covenant that will be confirmed with many for 1 week, 7 years. This is a peace covenant, a treaty that will be made with Israel. Brother Branham taught that this covenant would be the starting gun for the final 7 years of tribulation. He warned that we should watch for peace agreements involving Israel because they carry prophetic significance far beyond what news commentators understand. When Donald Trump facilitated the Abraham Accords, bringing multiple Arab nations into peace agreements with Israel for the first time in history, something unprecedented happened. When he moved the American embassy to Jerusalem, officially recognizing it as Israel's capital against decades of international opposition, he stepped into a prophetic pattern that Brother Branham warned we should be watching for. We're not saying Trump is fulfilling Daniel's prophecy of the final covenant, but we are saying that these peace initiatives are setting the stage, creating the conditions for that final prophetic fulfillment. Leave your name in the comments below so we can pray for you by name, because what comes next in this prophetic timeline demands that we're spiritually prepared and prayed up. Something happened in 2020 that Middle East experts said was impossible. The Abraham Accords brought the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Morocco, and Sudan into formal peace agreements with Israel, nations that had refused to recognize Israel's right to exist for 70 years. This wasn't just diplomacy. This was a seismic shift in the spiritual and prophetic landscape of the Middle East, and Donald Trump stood at the center of facilitating these historic agreements. Brother Branham taught throughout his ministry about God's promise to Abraham in Genesis chapter 12 verse 3, where the Lord said, "I will bless them that bless you, and curse him that curses you, and in you shall all families of the earth be blessed." He emphasized that this wasn't just an Old Testament principle that expired. This is an eternal covenant that still applies today. Any nation, any leader, any person who blesses Israel positions themselves for God's blessing. Any who curse Israel position themselves for God's judgment. In his sermon, Israel and the Church, Branham taught about the restoration of Israel and how Gentile nations would play a role in God's end-time purposes. He explained that while the church age was given to the Gentiles, God never forgot his covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. The restoration of Israel wasn't just a political movement, it was the fulfillment of Ezekiel's prophecy, where God said he would bring his people back from all the nations where they'd been scattered and plant them in their own land again. When Trump moved the American embassy to Jerusalem in 2018, he did what no other American president had the courage to do for over 70 years. Every president since 1948 had promised to recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital. But when the pressure came from the international community, they all backed down. Trump didn't. He stood firm, and in doing so, he aligned America with God's covenant purposes for that city. Jerusalem isn't just another Middle Eastern capital. It's the city that God himself chose, the city where Jesus will establish his throne when he returns. The Abraham Accords didn't just create political alliances. They opened doors for increased cooperation, trade, and cultural exchange between Israel and Arab nations. More importantly, they normalized relations in a region that's been at war for generations. Brother Branham taught that before the final tribulation begins, there would be a season of relative peace in the Middle East, a false sense of security that would lull people into complacency. If this teaching is opening your eyes to what's really happening, share it with someone who needs to understand these prophetic times we're living in. Brother Branham preached one of his most powerful series on the 7 church ages, and when he came to the Laodicean church age, the final age before Christ's return, his words carried a weight that's even more relevant today than when he first spoke them. He taught from Revelation chapter 3 verses 14 through 22, where Jesus described a church that was lukewarm, neither hot nor cold, rich and increased with goods, but spiritually naked, blind, and wretched. He said this described the condition of the church in our generation. In his sermon, The Laodicean Church Age, preached in 1960, Brother Branham warned that this final church age would be marked by compromise, worldliness, and a form of godliness that denied the power thereof. He saw a church that had buildings, programs, and religious activities, but had pushed Jesus outside the door. In Revelation 3 verse 20, Jesus stands outside his own church, knocking, trying to get back in. That's the condition of the modern church, and we're watching it happen exactly as he warned. He taught that one of the clearest signs of the end times would be the breakdown of moral standards, particularly in how people dressed, talked, and conducted themselves. This wasn't him being old-fashioned or judgmental. He was simply pointing to what Jesus said in Matthew chapter 24, that the days before his return would be like the days of Noah, when violence and immorality filled the earth and people's thoughts were only evil continually. Look around at our culture today and tell me we're not seeing exactly what he warned about. Brother Branham also preached extensively about signs in nature. He taught that when you see natural disasters increasing, earthquakes in different places, pestilences, famines, these aren't just random events. They're birth pangs signaling that something is about to be born, that we're approaching the moment when Jesus breaks through the clouds to catch away his bride. Every major earthquake, every pandemic, every natural disaster is creation itself groaning and travailing, waiting for the sons of God to be revealed. But here's what many miss in all of this. Brother Branham didn't preach these signs to create fear. He preached them to create readiness, to wake up a sleeping church, to call out a bride that would be watching and prepared when the midnight cry goes forth. What's happening with Trump, Israel, peace agreements, and global politics isn't happening in a vacuum. It's all part of the final pieces falling into place before the greatest event in human history, the return of Jesus Christ for his church. Drop a comment and let us know if you're feeling the urgency of this hour, because what comes next demands that we're spiritually awake and ready. In December of 1965, just months before Brother Branham went home to be with the Lord, he preached one of his most urgent and powerful messages titled The Rapture. In that sermon, he taught extensively about the parable of the 10 virgins from Matthew chapter 25, and he focused on verse 6, where it says, "And at midnight there was a cry made, 'Behold, the bridegroom comes, go out to meet him.'" He explained that we're living in the midnight hour right now, and that cry is going forth across the earth, calling the bride to wake up and prepare herself. Brother Branham taught that the rapture isn't something that will catch the bride by surprise. He said there would be 3 stages: a shout, a voice, and a trumpet. 1 Thessalonians chapter 4 verses 16 and 17 describes this perfectly. "The Lord himself shall descend from heaven with a shout, with the voice of the archangel, and with the trump of God. And the dead in Christ shall rise first, then we which are alive and remain shall be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air." He taught that the shout is the message going forth right now, waking up the sleeping virgins, calling them to get oil in their lamps. But here's what's critical to understand. Brother Branham never set dates. He refused to predict the exact day or hour because Jesus himself said no man knows the day or the hour. What he did teach was that we can know the season, we can recognize the signs, we can see when things are lining up exactly as prophecy declared they would. When you see Israel back in their land, when you see peace agreements being made, when you see moral decay accelerating, when you see the church becoming lukewarm, you're not looking at random coincidences. You're looking at prophetic road markers telling you that you're close, very close, to the greatest event in human history. The bride that Jesus is coming back for isn't a denomination. It's not a building or an organization. It's individuals who have a personal, intimate relationship with him, people who are living in holiness, watching, praying, and longing for his appearing. Brother Branham taught that this bride would be a called-out people, separated from the world system, walking in the Spirit, and demonstrating the same power and gifts that operated in the early church. She won't be perfect in the sense of sinless, but she'll be perfected in love, cleansed by the blood of Jesus, and walking in obedience to his word. Everything we've talked about in this message, the 7 visions, Israel's restoration, Trump's role in peace agreements, the signs of the times, it all points to one conclusion. We're out of time. The stage is set. The players are in position. The prophetic clock is ticking its final seconds before midnight strikes. If you've been playing games with God, if you've been lukewarm in your faith, if you've been putting off surrendering your life fully to Jesus, this is your wake-up call. Brother Branham's final message to the church was simple but profound. Watch and pray. Be ready. Live every day as if it could be the day when the trumpet sounds and the dead in Christ rise first. He taught that the bride of Christ wouldn't be caught off guard, scrambling at the last minute trying to get right with God. She would be watching, waiting, longing for his appearing, living in daily expectation that today could be the day when heaven breaks open and Jesus steps through the clouds. What we've shared with you today isn't just history or theology. It's a living, breathing, prophetic reality unfolding before your eyes right now. Every move in Israel, every peace agreement, every sign in the heavens and the earth, they're all crying out the same message. The King is coming. The bridegroom is at the door. The midnight hour has arrived, and the cry is going forth, "Behold, he comes." Brother Branham would often quote from 2 Timothy chapter 4, verse 8, where Paul wrote, "Henceforth there is laid up for me a crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, shall give me at that day, and not to me only, but unto all them also that love his appearing." That phrase, "love his appearing," that's the heart of a true bride. Not just believing he's coming, but loving the fact that he's coming, longing for it, living for it every single day. Right now, wherever you are, whatever you're facing, I want you to know that God sees you. He knows your name. He knows your struggles, your doubts, your fears, and your faith. Leave your name in the comments below so we can lift you up in prayer by name, because we're not just a channel, we're a family of believers standing together in these final hours. Share this message with someone who needs to hear it, someone who's been asleep spiritually and needs to wake up before it's too late. If you haven't already, subscribe to this channel because we're going to continue bringing you prophetic teaching that reveals what God is doing in the earth right now. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss a single message, because what's coming in the days ahead is too important to miss. The same Jesus who saved you, who died for you, who rose again on the third day, he's coming back for you. Not maybe, not hopefully, but certainly, absolutely, without question. And when that trumpet sounds, may he find you watching, praying, and ready to meet him in the air. God bless you, and may his Spirit quicken your heart to the urgency and the glory of this prophetic hour we're living in.